Welcome to Wheel of Horror, the podcast where two best friends spin a wheel every day in the month of October. It chooses the horror movie, and they discuss it. Today we're talking about the 1980 film Friday the 13th, which was directed by Sean S. Cunningham. I'm your co-host, Alec.
I'm Erik.
And today we have a very special guest. We have my dad, Greg Lawless, joining us for the show. Thanks for joining us, Dad.
Hi, everybody. This is awesome. I'm so happy to be here.
I just kind of want to give a little context of why we're doing this episode again. So we did this one, I want to say like October 6th of last year, right when we started the wheel, and our mics weren't the best then. So I figured let's redo the episodes. And we wanted to specifically bring you on because you saw this in theaters and it like changed your life basically, right?
Yeah, it scared the hell out of me back in the day. I have a very different opinion of it now, though.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I guess like before anything, I wanted to just like ask you, what's been your like experience with horror like throughout your life?
Well, this was my first experience with horror, and when I watched this movie in the theater, it scared me so badly that I didn't watch, or I couldn't even hear a commercial about a horror movie for years. So it basically turned me off to horror films for at least 5 years.
So you were like, yeah, I want to hear like that story in detail, but Erik, how was it for you revisiting this for the 25th time?
Yeah, just about. I mean, I caught something I didn't catch before at the end of this movie with the machete at the end. What she uses to kill Jason's mom. I'm like, oh, machete, that's what he uses in the future. I just didn't connect that until now. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one who didn't realize that.
Yeah, I mean that head cutting off scene is like so notorious, but I don't know if I ever.
But that the machete comes back as like his weapon eventually, and it's like, oh, that's the weapon that killed his mom, and like I didn't really click that together until this 25th time of watching it. I guess I don't know.
Well, I was surprised at the how real the first death scene was when the young girl got her throat slit. Initially, the one that was going up to be the cook at the camp.
Was it Annie or Alice? Annie, right? Yeah.
Yeah. To me, it looked real now when I watched it. And that was 1980.
The makeup effects artist, his name is Tom Savini, and he did like Dawn of the Dead, and he went on to have such a huge career. But this was like the thing that threw him into the spotlight, especially that Kevin Bacon kill. People were like, "What? Like, how is this even possible?" And that's sheep's blood, actually. That's
real blood they used of some kind.
Yeah, so it's sheep's blood. So it was like he was under, and you can see now, I mean, like if you watch it on like really high def TVs, like you can see the neck that it's fake, but
right.
It's a tube that they're under the bed and they're blowing the blood through the tube, and that's why that spurt happens, because it was so like spontaneous. They're just like, oh my God, we have to get this take, we have to get it. So they just like blew it as much as they could and just like spurted it out. But yeah, sheep's blood.
Could have done pig's blood and it would be a good like bacon pig joke. I don't know. It's stupid, but would have been better.
That was the most traumatic part of the film for me because I had a bunk bed when I was a kid. So
were you top bunk and you were like scared like boy?
I was bottom bunk, the same one that he was on.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It was awful. But now I realize it looked much more fake. Now, this was actually the first time that I've revisited this movie since 1980 when I saw it live in the theater.
Really?
I've never
Get out of
it.
here.
I haven't seen it.
This is your second time watching it?
Yep.
Oh
absolutely.
my, that's kind of cool.
Oh my God. Wait, so all right. So why don't we do this?
Let's go. Let's do it. Alex.
Let's hear the story, because that's like we've talked about it on other episodes. Like, yeah, my dad used to tell me this story about how him and his brother went to go see this movie, and it like, I mean, you tell it. Yeah. So you were Niantic, right? What made you want to go see this movie?
Well, I think I was 13 at the time, because when this came out, it was actually 1980, but it was probably before my birthday. And so my brother and I wanted to go see this film really badly because it was a horror film and it was really cool. So my cousin Joey and my brother and I went to the movie, and somehow I vaguely remember my mom, signing off to let us in and watch the movie, and she had no clue. So she just let us in and told her it was okay. And we watched it from the balcony because they had a really cool balcony in Niantic Theater at the time. So we watched this movie, and the entire time we were on the edge of our seats. There was nothing like this before, and it was so realistic. It felt like a snuff film for us. It really felt so real. So we were just watching it on the edge of our seats the entire time. And I realized that I don't remember ever seeing the end scene because, as Alex heard the story, we were so afraid at this point that we were relieved when she finally went out into the boat at the end of the movie, and we were able to relax. And I can feel myself breathing now, because the stress and the agitation from being on the edge of your seat the entire time had gone away, and you were just relaxed that she finally got out of this horror show. And then Jason jumps out of the water, and Kenny and I ran out of the theater, ran down the stairs, and we ran outside, and we had to walk home. And my cousin Joey, who's a firefighter, so he's a big guy. I mean, he wasn't a firefighter then, but he was still a big guy. He was crying the whole way home. And we got home and we were just traumatized. And of course, we had the bunk bed, so that was even worse. So all I could do is think of the scene with Kevin Bacon. And I didn't want to sleep on my bottom bunk bed, so I jumped in my brother's bed, and we like sang like Beverly Hillbillies theme song the entire time, trying to get it out of our mind. It was just horrible.
There's a story about a man.
It was anything to take our minds off of it. It was so traumatic because, don't forget, back then that was real. I mean, a 13-year-old kid seeing that for the first time. And I think I must be more desensitized now, because back then it was like nothing I'd ever seen. There were no movies I could compare it to. There were no TV shows, certainly, that had that kind of gore.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so traumatic.
I love that story. Alex told me that. I think the first time I heard that was when I was probably like 13 years old, when I was like really starting to get into horror movies. And I literally picture the scene with like Jason jumping out of the kayak, but before he even grabs Annie, you're just out of that theater, like that scene in Forrest Gump when he just like runs out of the house, like that scene where he just like runs like past his mailbox like at full speed. That's what I picture you running out of the theater like with
that was exactly it. And to this, I mean, really, when I watched it this time, I got nervous because I was waiting for something to send me back to that time, and I didn't. I think I have to be desensitized. Well, now it's just silly.
Knowing that this was your second time watching it, I'd be like, could this have like some PTSD effect on you where you go back? Like, I was like, Alec didn't tell me that this was your second time watching it. I probably would have been like, you got to like make sure your dad's okay for this. He's probably not. No, but obviously you're like that was so long ago, and here I am now, and it must have been cool to reflect on that though.
It was. I forgot a lot of the movie. There's some scenes that were so dumb. That kid that was dancing around, or third kid that gets killed, and he's the one that's in the bunk bed above Kevin Bacon. He just annoyed me because I was that kid back in the day. I mean, you had friends that were annoying like that, and that was a normal thing for a teenager. But, as an adult watching it, you just want to punch the kid and hope he died. But
yeah, I think it's kind of funny too, like just looking at it from a 1980s lens, like the fact that grandma could just be like, yeah, they can go see it. And the guy's like, hey, his mom said it was okay. And the whole point of having a parent with you is if it does get too intense, they're like, okay, let's go. But like the fact that they could just do that, that's very different. And then it being in Niantic, that's not a fun walk home after seeing this movie. That kind of looks like Camp Crystal Lake.
Was it during the summer? Do you remember, or like a little towards the fall? I think this movie came out in the summer, right?
Yeah, no, it was definitely summer because we lived down there.
Oh man! And you're walking up the water, right, or whatever.
Yeah, we walked back through Crescent Point and
Camp Crescent Lake.
Camp Crescent, yeah. Oh, it was dark and scary.
We walked through Old Black Point, Alec, like late at night, and through a spider web once, and we had like moments where we were freaking out, like as kids. I remember, and like Old Black Point around that area it can get scary. It's very dark.
Oh yeah, it's not scary if you're not afraid of anything, but when you saw Friday the 13th 10 minutes earlier, that.
Oh man, that's good.
It's funny because I guess like in 1978 when Halloween came out, you would have been way too young to be seeing these kind of movies. But this is such a ripoff of Halloween. Like I'm watching it now. I'm like, wow, the whole opening scene it like takes place in the past, just like Halloween. There's a POV shot of somebody getting killed, just like Halloween. Some of the deaths too. Like Eric, you remember in Halloween when the boyfriend like swings down and his arms swing down when Michael Myers hangs him up and he swings his arms down?
Yeah, like out of the laundry room or whatever.
Yeah, there was the same in this movie too. Like I think Steve was hung up from a tree and then swings down, and I was like, wow, this is a lot of the same stuff.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot to it, but there's a lot of originality behind it. Like the idea of the mom being the killer is like, I mean, that's original. I think it's a pretty original movie, but yeah, it stems from Halloween and all that for sure.
And you'd never seen Halloween, Dad, before or heard of it or anything?
No, not then. I'm sure I've heard of it. I heard of it, but I only watched Halloween this past year. I hadn't seen the original.
Really? That's my all-time favorite horror movie. I love that movie.
Yeah. It was good. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, obviously, when you watch a movie that's really old, it
Yeah.
held up, I think, though, for the most part.
I always say Halloween is like you can see the first like 10 minutes of it, and then although Laurie Strode walking around the town for 2 hours and this and that, and like carving pumpkins, there's an hour filler, and then the last 10 minutes are just amazing.
But
Yeah.
Eric, I was thinking about because you've said that before too, where you're like, there's a lot of like boring parts in Friday the 13th and Halloween, but I think that's almost kind of the appeal of it, where it's
That's
like
what, yeah.
it's so mundane that you're like, when's something gonna happen? You're always waiting the tension because
Well,
it's so normal.
that's what it does to you in a theater. You're built up, and all of a sudden, like Annie gets her throat slit, and then like there's a flash of light, and then it just goes into like, oh, we're just gonna show up to the camp and start moving this log and do this and do that, and it just calms you down again. And then next thing you know, boom, it happens again. But then there's that grand finale that just the last 10-15 minutes of Friday when the mother shows up in the Jeep or whatever, and it's like, I Mrs. Voorhees. From there on, it's like action packed. Halloween has the same thing where it's just like pause, break, pause, keep going, crazy stuff happens. Then it's a nice little like, oh, we're going to carve pumpkins with Tommy and I'm going to go do my laundry and stuff like that. And then the ending is just amazing.
Yeah, you didn't expect like Mrs. Voorhees to show up, and you're like, oh, thank God she's here, and she has somebody else to, save her. And then
Yeah.
that went south fast. Although the fight scenes were probably more realistic because, she kept going down, and the girl, I forgot her name, but she kept beating her up, and it was like an old lady.
Alice.
It's
Alice,
gonna,
yeah.
yeah, she's gonna be beaten up by some young girl. But what were these guys doing the entire time? Where they, well, I guess you get an axe in the head, that's one thing, but they couldn't take her down.
I think there's the
yeah.
element of surprise with everybody because they see like there's that scene with Christy, the Christies of Christy, yeah. So he sees her, he's like,
Yeah,
oh
he was
hey, it's
surprised.
you,
Right.
it's you, and then she like probably stabbed him right there.
Right,
I think there's a little bit
I
of that,
recognize
and
it.
like Annie's driving with her, and she's all like comfortable with her, and she starts speeding. She's like, get me out of here, and she leaves. And then I mean, could Annie have taken her out? I don't know. Like how old is she in real life, Alec?
Oh yeah, that was the thing, Dad. We were gonna say this. So Betsy Palmer, guess how old she is in this movie?
You mean the one that played Annie?
No. Mrs. Voorhees. Guess how old she is in the movie?
Oh, I think I looked it up. Was she 50?
She was 54. She's your age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Oh.
I just like I think she looks like so old. I thought like
I would have
I
said
know, yeah.
close to 70. Like
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
I'd say that. But
Well, she had those. It looked like she had dentures because her
Yeah.
teeth weren't natural looking. So it looked like she had dentures. And back in the day, not that you'd be 50, but when you were 60 or 70, I mean, a lot of people had dentures. Back my grandparents and my great uncles and aunts, they had dentures at 60. Just bad hygiene, I guess, or bad dental care.
Jeez. Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
just always I see her and I'm always like, oh, she's probably like 70 years old in this. And no, she's 54.
Yeah, also the hairstyles and clothing and stuff that made her,
Right.
made her look older for sure. But like, everyone smoked cigarettes back then. Everyone. Yeah, so I don't know.
So going back, Dad, watching this again, did you enjoy it?
It's funny because I thought about that. I actually did enjoy it because it made me kind of remember and think back, and it kind of, in some ways, because I love my past, I love my childhood. I had a great childhood, so in some ways, I romanticize things. And when I look back on that, even though it was a very traumatic time, I got past that, and I'm okay now. So I kind of enjoyed watching it again. It was a silly movie, and I realized like it had such a profound effect on me back then. If I watched it as an adult for the first time, I would have just blown it off and thought it was stupid. But it was kind of nostalgic.
Would you want to go watch the sequels, or are you are you curious to see what happens next?
I may have actually watched one or two because clearly the kid that jumped out of the lake was not the Jason that's in the later movies where he's 6'4" and gigantic and with the hockey mask on. But the way they left the movie in the end, when she was in bed and she said, well, what happened to the child? The kid that jumped onto me, and they were like, we never saw anybody. There was nobody there. It kind of opened it up for the next movies. And then you start to doubt whether or not it was actually the mother the whole time and maybe Jason, because they had that first person aspect. So you wondered when this camera is watching the main characters walk around the lake and walk around the in the woods, and they walk right past her, but they never saw her. And it was like, how could they not see this person who was right there? And then I wondered, well, maybe it was Jason, maybe he was there. And then when Mrs. Voorhees showed up, maybe the other murders weren't her; they were Jason. But I don't know. I mean, that was just my take.
I've never thought of that. I don't think it could have been them just because like Jason couldn't, I don't think he could drive that car and stuff. But, You know what? It's kind of weird because I think the jump out scene is a dream. Like that's just 100% a dream, maybe brought on by like the lake or trauma or whatever. But if you look at the timeline, maybe she thinks Jason's dead and he's really not. She thinks he drowned, but maybe he's living in the woods by himself. And then by the second part, because that takes place 5 years after this one, he is an adult by that point. And he is looking for revenge on his mother because in the second one, he finds his mother's head and makes like a shrine and stuff. And then he becomes like, crazy. But I don't know, Eric, what do you think? Do you think it's possible that maybe Jason did survive this whole time? He's been living in the woods.
Well, not as a kid,
What do you
No,
think?
no, he's old.
Well, yeah, but like this movie ends with like not as a kid. He jumps out of the boat. He's still the same age he was when he was a camper, which doesn't make any sense. We're talking 1962 to where does this take place? 1980, about right?
Yeah,
So
but
he's got to be aged, So, but he's not.
but that's what I mean. Like that jump sequence is a dream, but like in 1957, when she thought he died, he actually didn't die, and he's been living out in the woods or whatever.
Right.
So he
Not
would
that
be-
she was responsible for all the movies, all the murders, or he was responsible for all the murders, but she was responsible for some, and maybe he was responsible for others. Like when she showed up in the end, I don't know. I kind of got the feeling that maybe she didn't know that all the other murders happened. I'm not sure. It was one of the thoughts that went through my head that I wonder if she wasn't responsible for all of them.
I never thought of it that way because now I'm like looking at it where why is the final fight such a struggle? You're right, because she kills, or at least somebody kills these people very quickly. I mean, they are mostly surprise attacks or whatever, but like there's no struggle in any of the other deaths. And then there's the biggest struggle with Mrs. Voorhees and Alice at the end for like 10 minutes, just back and forth. Really fun bit of trivia. There was no stunt people on that. That was both of those actual actresses doing the whole thing.
Oh, wow.
But you're right. Like maybe there was a second killer. I mean, we're going really deep into it, but maybe there is. And
You brought this up in the last podcast, Alec. I mean, when we recorded this the first time, your sequel idea would be Mr. Voorhees being a part of it. Maybe we find out like the boots on the ground that we see constantly like chasing Alice through the woods wasn't Mrs. Voorhees, it was Mr. Voorhees. And like there's like a way to do that. They never went into Mr. Voorhees ever.
No.
I don't think so. But I don't remember them talking about his dad ever, but maybe that could have been a thing.
All right, ready for this? I just thought this is all right. So Mr. Voorhees is actually the killer the entire time, and he's been raising Jason in the woods while Mrs. Voorhees thinks that Jason was actually dead, but Jason's father's been raising him in the woods to be this maniac killer or whatever. And then Mrs. Voorhees comes out at the end, that happens, and then Jason picks up from part 2.
Who would be a good Mr. Voorhees actor back then?
Nick Nolte.
Nick Nolte. I was going to say Jack Nicholson, because didn't The Shining come out right around this time too?
Yeah, same year.
Jack Nicholson would have been great. Like, hi, I'm Mr. Voorhees. I used to go to this camp as a kid, and now I'm back again, and we're gonna have a little fun tonight. Huh? What do you say we play some strip Monopoly again, huh? Speaking of strip Monopoly, sounds like the worst.
Oh my God, that was horrible.
What's I was thinking in my head, like, what's the worst like game to play if you're gonna do it? Add strip to it, like strip poker, strip blackjack, strip Monopoly.
Strip risk.
Strip risk.
Strip pickup sticks.
Strip categories would be pretty bad. That was my one. Strip risk is probably the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. That's good.
Yeah.
No, I thought it was really funny. You guys put your I put my name, or it says guess something, but you said Mrs. Voorhees kind of cute, and I was like, no.
That's something that the listeners never have this opportunity to see this, but every time we do a podcast, we always have like some kind of joke to our names, and like Mrs. Voorhees kind of cute. Like that was mine, but
yeah, and the snake was real.
The snake.
And I didn't. You know what? When I saw that, I actually thought that because it squirmed when they hit it, and you could tell it was real. And I felt bad for it because, of course, now you could never do that in a movie, and I wouldn't do that anyway. But I literally thought about that afterwards, and I said, I don't think I would do that. And then they would fire me, and I'd say, no, it's okay, I'll do it. But somebody else probably did the deed because they weren't going to ask a 12-year-old to do it.
There's a little bit of a messed up story behind this. I just found this out. I watched this episode of Dead Meat, it's called. It's a YouTube channel, and they just did a episode on Friday 13th. Apparently, the makeup guy asked one of his friends, like, "Hey man, you should bring your pet snake to the shoot.
Oh,
no. We can use it in the movie." And the guy was like, "Okay." So that was actually one of the makeup guy's friend's snakes that he did not tell him was going to get killed. And then he killed the snake on the movie. Yeah. So
that's
apparently,
messed up.
I know. I just found that out like last week and I was like, man, because I knew it was a real snake, but I didn't know it was like somebody's pet that got like tricked into it almost. I was like, man, that's really messed up.
Yeah.
It's not
But
what you do,
I
especially for
know.
someone's
No.
pet. Like, not what you do.
Yeah. But anyways, a couple things I noticed that were a little out of place and funny, which would actually make sense for the Mr. Voorhees stuff. Do you guys remember when Alice opens the door and I think Ned was his name, he was stuck up with arrows into the door?
Yeah.
Okay. How does that happen without someone else interfering? Because there's no way a 54-year-old old woman is going to be able to lift a body up, stab arrows into the door to keep him up without anybody hearing it or whatever.
Well, yeah, but I did think about that because, well, not that, but when the other person that went out, the girl went out to the archery range and lights came on.
Yeah.
In my recollection, I remembered an arrow in somebody's eye, and I thought she got the arrow in the eye. I thought they shot her on the range. But when she was thrown through the window, it looked like, a bunch of children picked her up and tried to throw her through the window because she didn't really fly through the window. She just kind of got like pushed.
Like
And
dumped.
so
Yeah.
that would have been like a 54-year-old woman trying to throw a 140-pound woman through the window. So that looked a little more realistic. It was less, I expected her to just come flying through the window, and that would have been unrealistic.
Old lady strength is real. Old lady strength is a
Yeah.
real thing. My grandpa used to
Sure.
tell the story about his mother, my great grandma Cruel, and how he
Her
used
name
to
was
have this set.
Cruel?
Yeah, this is my mom's dad's last name was Cruel, Krul, and he used to have like a set of like these stupid big dumbbells, like really big, like 50-pound ones, and she was like lining out the laundry, and she stubbed her toe, and he said, I just looked through the window and I saw my mom take this thing, like throw it, like mad that she stubbed her toe out of anger, and like straight up she's like, she was a strong woman to do that, like. I always remember that story. It's like old ladies have some strength. They do.
Yeah.
And when they're mad, and she's Mrs. Voorhees is mad. So
Or psycho killers.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I just like I mean she's got to be crazy, Mrs. Voorhees, because she's just, she's doing the impersonation of her son and stuff like that, and obviously she's a murderer, but what drives her? Because they said that she tried to light the camp on fire in 62. She then killed the people in 58. How is she not getting caught, I guess?
Well, they made the cops look pretty stupid.
Yeah.
When that
Yeah,
one cop shows up on the motorcycle, I mean, he was as dumb as a stump.
oh my
And
God.
then the other cop that found them, that just randomly showed up at the end of the movie,
Yeah.
did she call them? Or, I mean, I don't remember
know.
how they showed up.
Right, exactly. That's what I mean. No, it couldn't have been a dream because she does end up in the hospital. But yeah, who calls the police? It's 1980. There's no cell phones. The town thinks they're preparing for the camp, so why check up on them? I mean, has anybody been murdered in the town that would make them think something had happened? I mean,
No,
uh,
unless Ralph
oh
went back and said something, but
I thought he was
Ralph,
going to show up at the end at some point. We don't see Ralph again.
no. Well, you see him in the
Like,
second one, but
you do, and yeah. I always picture like the end, like a bunch of ambulances and stuff, and they're like picking up all the bodies, and you just see Ralph like riding around his bicycle in the background, like doomed. I told you, doomed. That's what I thought was going to
yeah,
happen when I first saw this. I remember.
well, I had a question for you too, Dad. Like, because we were thinking about Annie, like the first girl that shows up. She
yeah,
doesn't really know where she's going, so she just gets dropped off from some bus in a random town in New Jersey. She goes into a diner, and everyone looks at her weird. And then she's 20 miles, they say, from the camp.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
if this was 1980, I mean, like, how do you get places if you don't have a car, you don't know where you're going? I mean, is that really what did you do?
No, 20 miles is a long way.
I
That's
know.
almost a marathon. You could call a taxi, but it would cost you more money than it would be worth. People didn't really hitchhike back then because that was after the 70s and people were nervous about hitchhiking because it was really not safe. So, yeah, they should have shortened up the ride. I don't know if they did it because they wanted to, make it seem like the cops couldn't just appear there, or
Oh,
that it
yeah.
was so remote that maybe she could get away with all that she got away with because nobody would ever check up there.
Hmm.
But, it was a big deal. It was celebrated that they were reopening Camp Crystal and nobody wanted it. And they called it Camp Blood.
Yeah.
So, when they found out that it was being reopened, if anything weird was happening at all, I guess it would be too remote to just go check on randomly.
Hmm.
That's all I could think of. Because I did think about that. It was kind of odd that they mentioned the 20 miles. And the guy
Yeah.
in the oil truck that drove her up there only drove her like 10 miles, and then she still had a 10-mile walk. But I
Yeah.
thought they did a good job with the way that they didn't really show who was driving any of the cars at all, and the way that they showed that she was driving the Jeep,
Uh-huh.
but you didn't know who was driving it, and this person picked her up, and she felt safe with the person. So that could have been a woman, as opposed to, obviously it wasn't Jason because he was all weird and deformed.
Yeah.
So he didn't pick her up in the Jeep.
Yeah. Do you guys notice that Jeep is the same Jeep that Steve's driving?
I thought so too, but I
Yeah.
didn't rewind it to see.
It is. And I was like, did they just run out of
That's budget right there, if you ask
It
me.
is. It
Yeah.
is, but
Well,
now
I mean, but like they probably made it seem like Mrs. Voorhees stole the car, so I don't know. Like,
maybe, but yeah, now it's like raising all these questions. That's why I like to talk to people that like haven't watched the movie really ever, Dead, because like you're looking at it from a totally new point of view. Where now I'm thinking like, man, maybe there is a second killer. I mean, I'm obviously there isn't, but like I'm reading into it too hard. But yeah,
The other thing was, Kevin Bacon, when I was watching that movie, he had an effect on me. I mean, he clearly has a presence, and it's the reason he went on to become a star. I mean, he had something that made him, you kind of felt a connection with him. And now
yeah,
he's a big deal. So that was, I think, one of his first roles after he was in a soap opera or something. He did something before that.
Animal
But,
House.
oh, was that before?
That was 78 Animal House.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, he was a great catch for that movie.
Yeah. He has that one little scene where he like watches the storm come and he's like, "Oh, that's gonna come through the valley like a son of a gun." Like he really looks like he's really invested in that scene. And then his girlfriend talks to him about like the blood and like having that dream. She's like, "I've had this dream like 6 or 7 times about the rain turns to pebbles and then it turns to blood." And
and
I
he's
was
like, "Cool, let's just go to this cabin and make out."
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
That's pretty much what he
And
did. But
nobody at all is going to walk through the woods in a weird storm in their underwear
Right.
into
You're
into a
talking a-
bathroom.
I have terribly sensitive skin. I get poison ivy every summer, like clockwork. Watching this movie alone with these guys running through the woods and stuff, I'm like, like that is, and they're all short shorts and stuff. I'm like, oh, get out of
Yeah.
here! Like, no, like never. But that's the most horrifying part in this movie. But sorry, not to cut you off.
No, I think you're right. And people didn't live in their own cabins at a camp, in a summer camp, and be okay with that. I mean, you wouldn't want to be alone up there. It was really creepy.
What was up with all the like? Why did guys wear like crop top shirts in the 80s? What was up with that?
Yeah, answer this, Greg. We need to know why.
It was a bad time. I had a Phil Collins half shirt, sleeveless shirt that I wore with pride
Oh my
in
god.
Vermont. It was bad. And it was fine. It's just the way it was. I mean, it was the 80s.
Yeah, I remember Alec had one year in middle school. He wore a Rolling Stones tour shirt of some kind. You had
That was my
back-
sister's.
Oh,
Wait, really?
Yeah. That was Debbie's shirt.
Sorry.
God.
I never saw the
yes.
Stones.
You're not editing
Yeah.
this out, Alec. You're not editing this out. We're keeping that. That's
I
awesome.
mean, it's
That's
a
awesome.
baseball. It's one of those baseball tees that just has a
Yeah,
Rolling Stones.
it was a black shirt with white
Oh.
sleeves. It was a typical concert shirt. It was just my sister went to the concert. I wasn't a Stones fan. Alec wore some of my other shirts, concert shirts, but not that one.
My day is made. Debbie, my day is made. If you're listening.
Oh, no.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that either.
I wish I saw the Stones, but now it's too late.
Yeah, I actually saw them in 2006 at Rentschler in East Hartford with
wow.
with Mike Alec. Yeah, that was like 17, 16 years ago. Jeez, it's crazy.
Yeah, I remember that. Really quick, I guess, like, do you guys have favorite parts of the movie?
My favorite scenes were the ones that scared me most. The Kevin Bacon scene with the arrow,
Mm-hmm.
and then the first scene where she got her throat slit. That to me, those were the ones that introduced me to horror films. So there was all downhill.
I think the Kevin Bacon scene is probably the one I think of first when I think of this movie. Like honestly, that and the corny, terrible head chop off scene at the end with the mother. Real quick, Alec, I just want to say one last thing.
Yeah.
You came up with your sequel idea last time we did this, and it was the dad. Like we never find out who Mr. Voorhees is, and that's a great sequel idea. I came up with another quick one that I would like to share. It's very stupid, but like think of this like the end scene with the Voorhees kid coming up. That turns into like a Loch Ness monster kind of thing, where it's like there's this boy in this lake that keeps showing up. And it turns into like a creature from the Black Lagoon kind of thing, where it's like there's a boy out there. He was supposed to have drowned. We don't know who he is, but he's kind of like deformed, but he's been in this water and people have seen him. And there's been multiple sightings. And the next sequel, the second one, should have started with like these people coming in and talking to Andy, like, what do you know about this boy in this lake? And then it goes like 10 years down the line and they do like a Voorhees boat tours where they're like guaranteed to see Jason or your money back. Like that's where my mind was going. I was just having fun with like thinking of like Jason Voorhees boat tours. Like everybody come aboard.
Yeah, I mean it's like Loch Ness kind of.
Yeah, but they do that. That could be
that's a Saturday Night Live episode. I mean, skit.
Yeah, there you go. That's what I was going for.
We do find out in part 8 that Camp Crystal Lake is actually connected to the ocean. We do find that out. So, I mean, there could be boat tours coming from all over the world to see this, Eric.
There you go. There you go.
Well, I was disappointed to find out that all that happened in New Jersey. I thought it was in Vermont. I don't know why. Or Connecticut.
Well, the second one was in Connecticut.
Oh, it was?
But, yeah, and then the third one, they go to California, and they actually made the lake they, like, actually dug a hole and made the lake. So the third one, if you watch it, it looks so different. But the first two, the second one's in Connecticut. I can't remember exactly where. It's a little bit west of Avon. I know that.
That's cool.
Yeah. My favorite scene at the end, which I guess kind of talks about New England a little bit, is obviously the jump scare with Jason, but I love that boat scene. I think it's just like the music's really cool. The way the reflections of the lake is, I just love the vision of it. And we talked about this last time, Eric, but you can tell in the background it's fall, because all the foliage.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that adds to the dream sequency part of it where you're like, wait, it's not even the same season. Like what's going on? I mean, obviously it's because they had to do reshoots, but it adds to that whole like, oh, this really is a dream. I don't know. I love the music in that scene. I just love the visuals too.
Well, and Mrs. Voorhees wore a sweater in the end. She was in a sweater. I mean,
yeah,
when she gets her head cut off. So
what about, oh, well, yeah, but Kevin Bacon says like, get back here. It's getting cold. So like maybe it was like a cold summer storm night or whatever.
Yeah.
And Alec, I just looked it up. It's Kent, Connecticut, where they filmed the second one.
Okay.
That is like that's very Western Connecticut. But hey, I always have to say this whenever anything happens Connecticut, it's the pride of Connecticut. Friday the 13th, pride of Connecticut.
John Mayer.
Yeah, pride of Fairfield, Connecticut.
Betsy Palmer died in Danbury, Eric. You can add that to your list.
Boom. Pride. Connecticut pride. That's what we're about.
Someone dies there. You're like, Brad.
Nah. I'm just joking around.
All right. Well, Dad, thanks a lot for coming on. This was really fun. I'm glad we got to share your story.
I asked Alec yesterday, I said, should I watch the movie again? And I didn't even think of it. I just figured I would tell my story, but I'm so happy I rewatched it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
it brought me back.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm so happy to hear it finally from you. I've always heard it from Alec, and that makes me happy. So
that night is great. Burned in my brain. It's one of the most vivid memories I have in my life. So,
actually, I think you told me one time too that didn't you like beg Grandma to like get you guys like shock therapy or something?
Yeah, we wanted to see a therapist and see if they could remove the memory from our brain because it was so traumatic. Honest to God. And then I'll never forget, there was one more thing I'll just mention quickly. There was a Fade to Black commercial. That was a movie at the time. It was about a puppet or something. I never saw it, but it was the next horror film that was released after that, after Friday the 13th. So I would hear that commercial come on the television and I would have to turn it immediately because it was a scary film and it just brought up all the memories of Friday the 13th and really just triggered everything. It was so sad that something so silly could be so traumatic. But at that time, it was state of the art. So it was real as far as my brain.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, I mean, we started watching horror movies when we were like 7, Alec.
Yeah. I know.
Kids today, they get traumatized for breakfast. It's like no big deal. So it's like, it's weird how the times have changed. But and how this movie just like is so outdated, but it has its moments that stand the test of time for sure.
I'm just imagining Papa being like so upset, like, God, Sandy, why'd you
Sandy,
let me see this?
Yeah,
see this?
Like this is why we don't buy them tickets to these movies.
I don't think he even thought of it. He was just like, that's not my problem. Let him see the movie.
Well, go get him shock therapy. Go get the shock therapy.
I convinced Grandma to buy me Pulp Fiction when I was like 13 on DVD. She's like, "What is this?" I was like, "Oh, it's a movie." Like, or whenever Kill Bill came out, I was like, "I got to see every Quentin Tarantino movie." And I remember you and Mom wouldn't let me get it, so I was like, "Grandma."
Yeah. Well, you saw The Exorcist when you were like that age, so.
Oh, we were so young. Yeah, that was.
Well, all right, Eric. What do you spin the wheel?
Let's spin the wheel. All right. Thank you again, Greg. This was great.
Oh, I was so happy to be on.
All right, spinning, and oh boy, Rocky Horror Picture Show. little pivot from this movie, but I think this one we'll have a lot of fun with it as well.
That's up your mom's alley, Alec.
Yeah, well, actually, we have Kelly Harper coming on as a guest for this one. She loves
Oh,
it.
wow.
Huge fan. Yeah.
We'll have to get her to tell her story. I think she was one of the characters for Halloween. I don't even know the character she was. But yeah, well, we'll see everybody tomorrow with that episode. But thank you, Dad, again so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, well, we'll see
All
everybody
right.
tomorrow.
Thanks, you guys.